or have another print disability which makes reading, holding a book, or turning a page difficult or impossible. The content is copyrighted by the respective publishers. For more information, please visit us on the web at nfradioreading.org.
Hello, this is P. Fitz, and for the next hour, I'll be reading from the current issues of the Niagara Gazette on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. Home health aides win $162 million in wage theft settlement. The company that runs New York York's state-funded home care program has agreed to pay its workers $162 million to settle a wage theft lawsuit filed last year. The deal, which must be approved by a federal judge, is one of the largest wage-related payouts in New York history. According to lawyers Hugh Barron of Katz, Banks, Kumin, LLP, and Michael Diller of the Legal Aid Society, who were part of a legal team that represented the plaintiffs. It could benefit as many as 200,000 home health aides with average payouts of nearly $700 each, equivalent to a week's pay. We're really proud of the results and what it will mean for these home care workers who work so hard to take care of their loved ones, Barron said. Those aides are employed as part of the Consumer-Directed Personal Assistance Program, a New York State program that allows disabled people to receive state-funded home care, often from their own family members. Since last year, the program has been run by the private company Public Partnerships, LLC, which was selected by Governor Kathy Hochul's administration. The aides sued PPL for wage theft, and the company will now be responsible for the $162 million payout. Since PPL took over the program in April of 2025, workers have repeatedly accused it of failing to pay them on time, or in some cases, pay them at all. PPL did not admit any illegal behavior in the settlement. We categorically deny the allegations in this lawsuit, and the settlement reflects no admission of liability or wrongdoing. We look forward to putting this matter behind us, said PPL spokesperson Meg Fitzgerald. The two sides bargained for months to reach the deal. The approval process for the settlement in class action lawsuits like this one can take months, so workers may not receive payments until early 2027, according to Barron and Diller. Even so, the settlement was welcome news to Debbie McGowan, who lives on Long Island and cares for her adult son, who has Down syndrome. Since last year, McGowan has spent hours wrestling with PPL's system, trying to get her shifts properly counted so she could be paid in full. Those struggles took time away from caring for my child, McGowan said. The settlement is really good decision, and it's fair, she added. As part of the settlement, aides will receive at least $25 million in compensation for money that PPL deducted from their wages to pay for mandatory health insurance plan. That plan was harshly criticized by many aides and policy wonks who noted that it did not cover basic medical care like doctor and hospital visits. Most of the aides already had insurance from other sources. Last year, New York Focus reported extensively on the plan which PPL funded by collecting 40 cents per hour from workers' paychecks. New York Focus estimated that PPL could make as much as $60 million in annual profits from the plan. Home health aides in New York make about $20 per hour. The plan was run by health insurer Leading Edge Administrators, a company that was founded by a convicted fraudster and has a long record of saddling patients with medical debts, approving treatments and then refusing to pay, and canceling patients' insurance without notice. In the wake of New York Focus reporting, PPL announced it would discontinue the plan and end its relationship with Leading Edge. Still, aides in the New York City area were required to enroll in the plan until April 30th, when it was discontinued and PPL ended its business relationship with Leading Edge, which also goes by the name Omni Advantage. If the settlement is approved, aides will be reimbursed for at least some of the money that they were forced to spend on that plan. New Salvation Army officer has hunger to better God's kingdom. Lieutenant Joshua Wesby has plans for Lockport organization. Lieutenant Joshua Wesby, the Salvation Army's new Corps officer and pastor, wants to bring a revival to the city Corps. Wesby, has been familiarizing himself with Lockport's chapter since spring and has a vision for expanded programming that grows the congregation and reaches out to youth. Seminary students at the Salvation Army College for Officer Training received their postings in May, Wesby said, so that they can use the location as the model for our final projects on operations and program planning. The folder Wesby received on Lockport indicated that the Sister Mary Loretta Memorial Community Soup Kitchen serves 200 people a day, 7 days a week. Wesby said the food pantry serves 300 people daily when it opens Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. He wasn't surprised by those numbers, he said. I come from a Corps in Brooklyn, and they'd have a line of shopping carts around the block, he said. A lot of people have families that need assistance. There's just a huge homeless population here that needs attention. Chris Gressert, the Corps' longtime community center director, snagged Wesby to lead morning prayer Monday as he entered the building. Gressart explained to those gathered that the Salvation Army is a church as well as a service center, and Wesby is the pastor. He's not a rookie anymore because he did his first sermon Sunday, Gressert said. The scant understanding of the Salvation Army as a place of worship was something of a surprise to Wesby. People don't recognize this as a church, he said. We have no youth involved here. We seem surrounded by so many schools. We only run a women's group and Bible study. What's a blessing about this posting is we need a revival. It needs someone who's vision-minded, and I want to let them know Jesus is here. Wesby said the seminary taught officers to focus on servant leadership and mental health. The thing that's emphasized the most is that this is a community's home, this building. We're not the boss. How would Jesus operate this stuff? We need to continue providing stability with the Code Blue shelter. While Monday marked the beginning of the chapter's summer day camp for children entering grades 1 through 6, Wesby wants to do more for youth. We want to do an after-school program. We need a little more diversity and intentionality with the youth. I want to start an intramural basketball league. Wesby knows the potential of youth after receiving his spiritual calling to serve at age 13. He said he grew up in the church in Port Jervis, New York, at the meeting point of New York, New Jersey, and Pennsylvania. While we lived across the street from a Salvation Army Corps, he never thought about what it might offer until he was called to go there. He enrolled in Vacation Bible School, participated in music programs, and attended a sleepaway camp. The officers were kind-hearted people, Wesby said. I like the way they operated with youth. Ever since then, I've had a hunger and drive to better God's kingdom. Once I got a calling to become an officer, I became an intern and they helped me get into the program. I believe the youth in this generation want the realities of the world, not to be kept from it. They need a safe place for that, and I think the Salvation Army would be perfect for that. Hunting for evidence. Detectives execute search warrants across city looking for leads in holiday homicides. Niagara Falls Police executed search warrants at 6 homes on Tuesday in a hunt for evidence tied to a pair of holiday weekend homicides and other recent shooting incidents in the city. Falls Police Criminal Investigation Division detectives, assisted by agents with the U.S. Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms and Explosives, investigators with the New York State Police and Niagara County Sheriff's Office, and emergency response teams from the Niagara Falls Police Department and Sheriff's Office fanned out through the city, hitting locations in Midtown, the South End, Monteagle Ridge, and Center Court. Warrants were executed simultaneously at homes at 1555 and 2489 LaSalle Avenue. Simultaneous warrant executions also took place at a duplex at 2904 20th Street in Center Court and at an apartment at 4600 Hyde Park Boulevard, apartment number 24. Police conducted their activity around noon by executing a warrant at a home at 638 22nd Street. Detectives seized what appeared to be a quantity of ammunition and gun parts from LaSalle Avenue homes and the residence on 22nd Street. Law enforcement sources confirmed the Gazette that the warrant executions are tied to the investigation of a pair of homicides over the July 4th holiday weekend, as well as shootings that occurred 2 weeks earlier. Falls Police also confirmed the warrant activity in a written statement. No person was harmed during these events. The results of these search warrants are not being released at this time due to them being part of ongoing investigations. Jayla Brown, 19, and Jalen Rios, 22, both of the Falls, were each gunned down in separate shooting incidents Sunday morning. Brown died from wounds she sustained in a hail of gunfire at the intersection of Highland and Fairfield Avenues at about 1 a.m. on Sunday. Rios died just 2 hours later during a blaze of bullets outside the bakery, a former bar in the 3000 block of Niagara Street. On Monday morning, City of Niagara Falls Code Enforcement officers posted a cease and desist notice on the entrance door to the bar. The notice cited exceedance of occupancy as the reason for shuttering the bakery. The bar has reportedly been operating without a liquor license and was being rented to various, quote, promoters of stage events. The bakery's operations have been tied by law enforcement sources to a promoter who has been linked to gun violence in the city of Buffalo. Buffalo Police Commissioner Erica Shields said Monday that 11 people were shot in the city over the holiday weekend. 6 of those victims were tied to violence that erupted after what was described as a large street takeover party near East Sullivan and Grider Streets on the Buffalo's east side. We need to focus on the fact that this was one promoter who promoted an event that was geared towards creating chaos and violence, Shields said at a news conference. Shields declined to name the promoter, but said he is based in Buffalo and had been charged with a misdemeanor last year for his involvement in a similar event. She did not disclose the nature of the charge. CID detectives reportedly do not believe there is a connection between the homicide outside the bakery and the slaying on Highland Avenue. You are listening to a reading of articles and features from the Niagara Gazette on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. On Tuesday afternoon, Falls City Council Chair Brian Archie held the first of a pair of scheduled community grief support events at the Doris Jones Resource Center. He told a crowd of close to 100 residents that tragedy strikes a little too frequently these days. Archie told the gathering that he hoped through prayer and a collective unity that the community could confront the sudden increase in youth-driven gun violence. We have to take this to the streets. This is a street fight, he said. We need a unified message that we're not going to stand for this anymore. Our youth are hurting and they think they're not being heard. Archie said young people in the Falls were using weapons of war and were fighting over nothing. A number of local pastors said they believe that times have changed and that youth in the Falls are lost and need someone to talk to, someone to learn from, though none seemed certain about ways to achieve that goal. Some said people living in the community needed to speak up with information that might help police find the killers. But a second victim of the gunfire outside the bakery, a 20-year-old male who was treated for non-life-threatening wounds and released from Niagara Falls Memorial Medical Center, has reportedly refused to provide CID investigators with any useful information. The church has to be an active part, Pastor Jesse Scott of Word of Life Ministries said. God help our city right now. Niagara Falls is better than this. This month in American history, on July 4th, 1776, the Continental Congress approves the Declaration of Independence, formally announcing the creation of the United States and the separation of the colonies from Great Britain. July 21st, 1861, Battle of Bull Run becomes the first major land battle of the Civil War. And July 1st of 1862, President Lincoln signs the Revenue Act of 1862, which creates the Internal Revenue Service and the first progressive federal income tax. July 4th of 1863, one day after the North claims victory at Gettysburg, forces led by Ulysses S. Grant capture Vicksburg, Mississippi. July 6, 1892, a labor dispute between Carnegie Steel Company and its workers, the Homestead Strike, turns violent. The dispute ends as a major loss for labor unions after Pennsylvania Governor Robert Emery Patterson calls in the National Guard. On July 10th, 1925, teacher John Scopes is tried for teaching evolution during the first day of the Scopes monkey trial. July 26, 1948, President Harry S. Truman integrates the military. On July 27, 1953, the Korean War armistice is signed, officially ending one of the most significant conflicts of the Cold War. July 29, 1958, NASA is established. July 24, 1974, the U.S. Supreme Court rules against President Richard Nixon in a decision that leads to the release of the Watergate tapes. 3 days later, the impeachment process against Nixon begins. July 20th, 1976, NASA's Viking 1 lands on Mars, the first successful U.S. landing on another planet. The lander sends back the first photos of the surface of Mars. July 28, 1984. The 1984 Summer Olympics officially opened in Los Angeles, California. The games were highlighted by American Carl Lewis winning 4 gold medals. July 26, 1990, President George Herbert Walker Bush signs the Americans with Disabilities Act. July 17, 1996, TWA Flight 800 explodes off of Long Island, New York, killing all 230 people aboard, including 16 students and 5 chaperones from the Montoursville High School French Club. July 19th, 1996, the 26th Summer Olympic Games open in Atlanta, Georgia. The games are marred by a pipe bomb explosion at Centennial Olympic Park in Atlanta that kills 1 person and injures more than 100 others. Homeowners to discuss radioactive testing. Town of Niagara residents want area declared a Superfund site. A group of Niagara County homeowners who have asked Governor Kathy Hochul to speak with them about radioactive materials found on their properties now plan to share results from private testing during a press conference today in the town of Niagara. The homeowners, Carolyn and John Johnson of Fox Avenue and Alexis Hawk and Trevor Bradley of Chester Avenue, are concerned about what they describe as extremely high levels of radioactivity found in their yards. As was first reported by the Buffalo News on Wednesday, a group of homeowners asked Hochul's office in a letter dated July 7th to declare their neighborhood a New York State Superfund site. They are also asking that the state to help them relocate amid an ongoing regional radiological investigation being overseen by the New York State Department of Transportation and the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency. We are concerned about our health and safety, the homeowners wrote in their letter, a copy of which was obtained by the Niagara Gazette on Thursday. We have both had private testing of our home with fairly sophisticated equipment. It revealed extremely high levels of radioactivity. The alarms on the equipment were repeatedly triggered. There were readings above 900 counts per second. The highest readings were in our gardens and recreational areas. We had to wash our shoes after walking around our properties because they were registered on the equipment. This situation is an emergency. We need assistance today, the homeowners added. As the Niagara Gazette reported on July 3rd, The DEC and EPA sent Johnson a letter in May notifying her that of their interest in accessing her property to conduct radiological testing. She was among a group of 120 property owners to receive such notices as part of the Niagara and Erie County radiological assessment, a years-long examination of potential areas of concern in both counties. Properties in need of on-site testing were identified during aerial surveys in 2023 and truck-based surveys that started last year. In their notice, the DEC and EPA asked homeowners to provide regulators with permission to enter their properties to perform initial radiological investigation. The notice indicates that the work could include the use of handheld detection equipment, sample collection, and photographic documentation. Johnson questioned the terms being offered, including a requirement that testing could only move forward if affected property owners agreed to waive any and all claims they may have now or in the future to seek or receive reimbursement from the DEC, the EPA, or the state of New York. In their letter to Hochul, the group of homeowners living in the neighborhood near Reservoir State Park said they are not comfortable with the waiver, while arguing that the state must immediately provide follow-up testing of their properties, whether they signed it or not. Testing for health and safety should not turn on us waiving our rights, the homeowners wrote. We are deeply mistrustful of how New York has handled this issue so far. The waiver is only exacerbating our unease. Several local, state, and federal elected officials and representatives from environmental and community groups, including the Sierra Club and the NAACP Niagara Falls branch, are scheduled to join the homeowners during today's press conference. New York sues 3M, DuPont, and others over forever chemicals, wants to force companies to fund environmental cleanup efforts. Albany, New York's Attorney General sued several large chemical and agricultural companies on Thursday, alleging they knowingly sold harmful so-called forever chemicals used in cosmetics, non-stick cookware, and other products. The lawsuit against 3M, DuPont, Nemours, the Chemours Company, and Corteva, and other manufacturers is the latest legal action over PFAs, which have been linked to an increased risk of certain cancers and developmental delays in children. Big companies like 3M and DuPont knowingly sold toxic products that threatened New Yorkers' health and polluted our environment for decades. It is time for them to pay for the damage they caused, the New York's Attorney General Letitia James said in a statement. Filed in state court in Albany, the lawsuit seeks to force companies to fund environmental cleanup efforts in New York and to warn consumers about their products. It argues that in some cases the companies were aware that the chemicals were toxic or could cause environmental damage. DuPont, 3M, Corteva, and Chemours didn't immediately respond to Thursday's messages seeking comment. Last year, DuPont, Chemours, and Corteva agreed to pay New Jersey up to $2 billion to settle environmental claims stemming from PFAS. PFAS, or perfluoroalkyl and polyfluoroalkyl. Substances are a group of chemicals that have been found for decades and have been spread into the nation's air, water, and soil. They were incredibly useful, ensuring that firefighting foam suffocates flames and helping clothes to withstand rain, among many other uses. But because they resist breaking down, the chemicals stay in the environment and become harmful. Newfane man pleads guilty to vehicular manslaughter. Passenger died following crash in town of Lockport last year. A Newfane man charged in a fatal one-car crash at Lockport Junction Road last summer has pleaded guilty to vehicular manslaughter. Thomas H. Summers Jr., 53, of Newfane, pled guilty Thursday to second-degree vehicular manslaughter in Niagara County Court. Summers admitted to driving his truck while impaired by the combined influence of cocaine, methamphetamine, and oxycodone, which caused the July 16, 2025 crash that took the life of his passenger, Rodolfo Espinoza, 48, on Lockport Junction Road in the town of Lockport. Shortly after 7 p.m., Niagara County Sheriff deputies responded to the crash in the area of 5151 Lockport Junction Road, where a 2011 Chevy Silverado that had been heading south veered off the side of the road, struck a utility pole, and rolled over. Espinoza was trapped in the vehicle and died at the scene despite efforts from first responders. Summers was determined to be under the influence by a drug recognition expert and charged with felony count of second-degree vehicular manslaughter and driving while impaired by drugs. After receiving treatment from Lockport Memorial Hospital for injuries sustained in the crash, he was remanded to Niagara County Correctional Facility following the crash. On Wednesday, Niagara County District Attorney Brian Seaman said this plea should be a reminder to everyone of the consequences of driving while impaired by any substance. The possible prison term allowed by law for this crime will never be sufficient for the damage caused by the defendant. We will be asking for the maximum term. Summers faces 2 to 7 years in state prison when he returns to be sentenced by acting Supreme Court Justice Mario Jacoby on September 11th. The case was investigated by the Niagara County Sheriff's Office and prosecuted by Vehicular Crimes Bureau Chief Christine Savoya. You are listening to a reading of articles and features from the Niagara Gazette on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. Bewley Building rezoning delays draw concern. Advocates say rezoning of landmarks parking lot is an inevitability. Lockport. Although Catherine Fogel submitted a resolution Thursday, for the Common Council to consider rezoning Bewley's Buildings parking lot, the matter was not reviewed Wednesday night's 8-minute meeting. The 4th Ward Alderman said Tuesday that she was told that the resolutions must be submitted by the Wednesday prior to the council meeting. But things are added late all the time, she said. Fogel said she confirmed that the resolution could be introduced at the following council meeting. In order to build a fire code compliant stairwell without altering the Bewley Building's historic character, Pathstone would need to construct the stairwell on the wall facing their parking lot. To allow the stairwell, Pathstone seeks to change the parking lot zoning from light industrial to mixed use, which would match the Bewley Building's zones. How they're rated. Delays in the Bewley Building rezoning and lack of communication from the city have raised concerns from the building's owner, Pathstone Development, and members of the Greater Lockport Development Corporation that the city is stalling. In addition to addressing the council's month-long delay in voting on the rezoning, speakers at Wednesday night's meeting emphasized the need to correct a mismatch in zoning. Joshua Frost, Director of Real Estate Development for Pathstone Development, said the rezoning of the Bewley Building's parking lot is an inevitable need for the party that owns the building. Currently, the parking lot is zoned for light industrial, and while the building is zoned for mixed use, the zoning action is entirely separate from the project, Frost said. Lockport has so much potential, so many good things happening. Having a welcoming development environment is something that's important. Holding on to the past of what was in the 1960s and 70s is just not realistic. Frost described the delays in approving the parking lot's rezoning as the city standing in the way of its own progress. Last summer, Pathstone Development and its consultant, Edgemere Development, proposed renovating the Bewley Building into 100 affordable apartments while preserving the building's historic character. Although the GLDC had provided a letter of support for the project, Mayor John Lombardi swiftly opposed the project as a detriment to the city's downtown. Last August, the Common Council unanimously approved the Pathstone opposition resolution. Before the developer presented blueprints or provided any specifics on the renovation, and despite the Bewley Building being privately owned. After Fogel walked the Bewley Building's vacant floors and toured Pathstone apartment building in Albion, she became supportive of the proposed renovation. Pathstone, Edgemere, and the GLDC have all presented information to the council on the shortage of housing that makes apartments in the Bewley Building more marketable than its current offices. Earlier this year, Charlie Oster, Vice President of Real Estate Development for Edgemere Development, said the project would be financed with money from the State Housing Finance Agency, HFA, that consists of tax-exempt bonds, low-interest loans, tax credits, an Empire State Development grant, and private funding. Oster said Pathstone would seek an investor. Usually it's J.P. Morgan, M&T, or KeyBank for $44 million. Pathstone would provide $3 million. They would add roughly $16 million from all HFA sources and use this $575,000 grant for nearly $64 million in funding. Oster said delays prevent Pathstone Development from being prepared for its real estate closing with the State Housing Finance Agency already scheduled for December. It takes at least 6 months to close a project, he said. Tuesday, Governor Hochul announced the start of construction for a new mixed-use development located at 33 First Street in Niagara Falls that features apartments. The 6-story, $39.5 million new build development will provide 73 new affordable and market rate apartments for individuals, families, including 21 supportive units for survivors of domestic violence, and commercial space for job readiness and workforce development training in downtown Niagara Falls. The project is developed by the Community Services for Everyone in partnership with Edgemere Development. Why can't that be us, said Steve Gers, Senior Vice President at M&T Bank and Chair of GLDC's Board of Directors, speaking of Pathstone's financing for the Bewley Building renovation. These tax credits are awarded, and they have to be allocated within a certain time period, or else the state will pull them back and give them to another community. I know that Pathstone has been working very hard with the city to push this through. Last week, the Bewley Building's ground floor windows facing Main Street were boarded up. On Tuesday, 3 storefronts were boarded. Matt Martin, owner of the Bewley Building, said Friday that the windows have been broken. These types of problems did not happen when the building was vibrant, Martin said. That we're trying to bring that back through this conversion. I'm sure the people aren't going to like the fact that we need to board up windows. Martin said the building's occupancy is now at 18 to 19%. Pathstone remains involved, Martin said. They're still in for now, but there is a time element for this as well to move the project forward. NT buys out unfavorable concession agreement at Marina, using $350,000 to buy out contract running through 2042. With the operators of the Lumberjacks restaurant and River Road looking to retire, the city of North Tonawanda has bought out the remaining 16 years of an unfavorable concessionary contract in the hope that a new deal could bring in more money for the city. We really need to see some of that initial investment coming back to the city, said Mayor Austin Tyler. While with the Common Council approving a $350,000 payment to dissolve the contract and take over all managerial rights, the city invested around $3 million 10 years ago into the neighboring 81-slip Gratwick Riverside Marina. The $350,000 was due to another party wanting to take over the lease for that amount. The $350,000 was bonded as it was in an unforeseen expense by Tylick. But Tylick is confident that would be earned back in a few years. Under the current terms, the city would only generate around $45,000 a year in revenue from the marina operations while being responsible for slip maintenance work. Full municipal control could potentially bring in $150,000 for the city. The concessionary agreement was first signed in 2012 during the current State Senator Robert Ort's term as North Tonawanda mayor. It would last until 2042, with the city having no legal exit without the concessionaire's consent. Lumberjacks will still be open through the end of the year and still be operated by Carol Talichet. Tylick said the city is still talking about what to do with the marina property, either investing in it or doing another concessionary agreement. The council has also approved 2 Lumber City Development Corporation grant applications to the city to 2 different state programs, one through the New York Main Street program and the other through the local waterfront revitalization program. The Main Street program would be for $500,000 in building renovation fund, targeting a 2-block area centered on East Oliver and Schenck Streets, along with $15,000 for streetscape enhancements. Such funds can provide up to $50,000 per building, with the owner providing as much 25% match. The LWRP application would be for $147,682 as the city plans a new public overlook space on Island Street next to the East Hill Foundation building. The current space is gated off and covered with overgrowth, with the goal of providing a lookout area of Tonawanda Island for bicyclists. The total project cost would be $173,743, with the city covering the remaining 15% of $26,061. You are listening to a reading of articles and features from the Niagara Gazette on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. Owner of former hospital cited for lack of outdoor maintenance. Rockland County owner hasn't addressed issue since June 15th. Lockport, the city's building inspection department may take action in court if the owner of the former Eastern Niagara Hospital at 521 East Avenue doesn't address the outdoor maintenance of the property. Jason Duell, the city's chief building inspector, said his office sent building owner Shraga Gold of Rockland County a certified violation letter for lack of maintenance of the property landscape beds. Duell said he received a receipt for the letter on June 15th, but no maintenance has been performed by the owner. He said the city has mowed the grass several times. Passers-by could see 3-foot thistles and Queen Anne's lace filling the landscape berm that runs along the East Avenue sidewalk. More tall weeds swayed from cracks in the parking lot during Thursday afternoon's wind gusts. Violation letter was for the weeds, Duell said. The grass we just handle. We cut it and bill them, and the weeds are separate. Duell said a second violation would involve the city filing an action in court. He said his office was attempting to contact Gold this week before taking that step. It's on a main stretch, and over the years it's been taken care of pretty nicely, Duell said. Does it stick out like a sore thumb? Yes. The question is, how do we get it resolved? The city, Gold, who is the CEO of Kids First, a provider of applied behavior analysis that is a service for children with autism and other needs, attended a Common Council zoning hearing in March of 2025. Gold said at the time that he wanted to renovate the hospital building into senior condominiums with a ground floor restaurant and stop-and-go grocery. Mayor John Lombardi III said last month that he has not had communication with Gold since that time. Attempts to reach Gold by Union Sun and Journal this week have been unsuccessful. Architect Jolie Milstein, who had accompanied Gold to the Common Council's meeting, said Wednesday that she is no longer under contract with him. John Craig, First Ward Alderman, said residents have contacted him with complaints about the property's upkeep. Regarding any plans to renovate the building, Craig said, that would likely happen after the owner finds federal or state development funds. No formal plans have been submitted to the city. Nobody's going to do development on that size building without soliciting support, Craig said. Connect Life appeals to donors. Connect Life Western New York's only community blood bank is putting out an emergency appeal to donors as the supply for local hospitals hits a critical low during the slowest time of the year for donations. All blood types are needed, particularly O positive and negative donors. The typically low turnout at summer blood drives has combined with rising need at Western New York medical centers to create the worsening shortage. Summer collections are usually lower than the rest of the year, but this July has seen donations drop by half compared to the same time in 2025. We really need our donors to step up and help Western New York hospitals get through this rough stretch. Sarah Dina, Senior Director of Communications and External Affairs at Connect Life. We usually have hundreds of units of O positive blood on the shelf. It's the most common blood type and can go to more than half the population. Today we just have 70. That will be gone in a blink if we see a major emergency in Western New York. All July donors will walk away with a $10 Delta Sonic gift card, as well as a raffle entry for tickets to a preseason game at the new stadium. Platelet and O-negative donors also get e-gifts cards as part of extra rewards programs for those donations. All the blood donated to Connect Life stays local, helping nearly every hospital in Western New York State counties maintain safe inventory levels. Donation appointments are available at centers in Williamsville, Waseneca, and Tonawanda, as well as mobile donation sites around the area each day. To schedule an appointment, visit connectlifegiveblood.org or call 716-529-4270. 52 House Republicans ask for higher energy prices. Speaker Mike Johnson, Majority Leader Steve Scalise, and 50 other House Republicans just signed a letter asking President Trump to allow the ongoing waiver of the Jones Act, a protectionist shipping law, to expire as scheduled on August 16th. They are effectively calling for higher energy prices. The Jones Act, passed in 1920, requires that ships transporting goods between U.S. ports and U.S. built, U.S. flagged, U.S. owned, and U.S. crewed. Given that the modern maritime industry is highly globalized, few ships meet those conditions, and the ones that do are very expensive. The law severely constrains U.S. coastwise trade. That especially harms the U.S. energy industry, which needs to transport fuel, feedstocks, and finished products between different regions of the country. That's why Trump waived the Jones Act on March 17th amid the Iran war, to help alleviate price pressures caused by the conflict. The Jones Act is frequently waived during natural disasters when it would hinder the transportation of relief supplies, but the ongoing 150-day waiver is the longest in recent history. In this real-life experiment of what life would be like without the Jones Act, the results have been excellent. The Cato Institute counts 136 voyages of foreign ships between U.S. ports under the waiver as of June 25th. The most common good transported has been gasoline, nearly 10 million barrels, according to government data. Some regions are seeing especially strong benefits. In the waiver's first 70 days, more gasoline and jet fuel were moved from the Gulf Coast to the West Coast than in the entirety, than in Then in the entirety of the 2020 to 2025 Cato found Puerto Rico has been able to buy U.S. propane, which it normally cannot because no liquefied petroleum gas tankers comply with the Jones Act. Those voyages have not replaced any demand for the domestic ships. The Jones Act compliant fleet remains fully booked. These are all extra voyages connecting American suppliers with American buyers that are normally prohibited by federal law. Contrary to fear-mongering about the Chinese takeover of shipping without the Jones Act, only one of 136 voyages was by a Chinese-flagged vessel. The most common flag sailing under the waiver are the Marshall Islands, Liberia, and Singapore. Yet, the 52 House Republicans say the law must come back into force because the waiver, quote, has become a loophole exploited by adversarial countries to erode America's maritime dominance, end quote. Such dominance does not exist despite, or perhaps because of, over a century of protectionism. Why any politician would want to sign their name to something that would raise fuel costs right now is hard to imagine. A December 2023 paper estimated that repealing the Jones Act would reduce the East Coast gasoline prices by 63 cents per barrel and diesel prices by 82 cents per barrel, saving consumers $769 million per year. It's revealing that only 52 out of 218 House Republicans have reportedly joined a letter that both the Speaker and the Majority Leader signed. Other Republicans, including Senator Mike Lee of Utah and Representative Tom McClintock of California, have introduced legislation to repeal the Jones Act. Energy Secretary Chris Wright called the waiver enormously helpful last month. National Economic Council Director Kevin Hassett called it incredibly effective. Interior Secretary Doug Burgum said it would reduce price volatility for American families. Letting the waiver expire will only be good for the country if it happens because the law has been repealed. You have been listening to a reading of articles and features from the current issues of the Niagara Gazette. We read from the Niagara Gazette every Saturday at 11 a.m. Your reader has been P. Fitz. Thank you for listening.
Coming up next in the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service, we have a reading of the Dunkirk Observer. Following that at 1 o'clock, we have a reading of some of our Northtown Bee papers, including Amherst, Clarence, Cheektowaga, Lancaster, and Depew. And then at 2 o'clock, we have the Southtown Bees, which includes Orchard Park, the Hamburg Sun, the East Aurora, and West Seneca papers. Stay with us for these readings and more. You're listening to the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. Radio Reading broadcasts daily readings 24 hours a day of newspapers, magazines, and books to people who are blind or have a print disability and are provided reading radios. Radio Reading's broadcast signal is provided at no charge by WNED. From broadcast studios at 1199 Harlem Road, Radio Reading continues our almost 40-year tradition of award-winning service. For more information on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service, call 716-821-5555. program is intended for listeners who are blind, have low vision, or have another print disability